Hey Wolfpack. Tonight, I have 3 subscriber stories for you. Now, I like to support my community as well, so please submit your story to either my email or my subreddit. Both will be listed in the description below. With that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. My friend and I used to always walk through a wonderful, spacious park when we were younger. It was full of tall trees, and it was very nicely maintained. In this large park, there was an abandoned mansion. I can't really say how long it had been there, but on that day, the front door of the mansion was wide open. The two of us decided to check out what was inside the place. As we inched through the door, the very first thing we noticed was that the mansion's floor was littered with crumpled up pieces of paper. We looked at each other and observed that there was no furniture, nothing except for those wrinkled balls of paper. The mansion had 6 rooms on its main floor, and every room we entered bore more and more scrunched up pieces of paper. We decided to open up one of the balls of paper to see what was inside. Our curiosity got the better of us. I picked up a single wrinkled piece, and as my friend picked up another, I unfolded mine, smoothing out its bends and dents. At that moment, it was almost as if a piece of rainbow emerged before our eyes, and I was suddenly standing next to a large window in one of the upstairs rooms of the house. I was looking outside into the large park. When I looked down at the piece of paper I held, it read, "Look outside the large window that oversees the park in the upstairs parlor." I dropped the piece of paper, and it fluttered gracefully to the ground. Meanwhile, I stared at my open hands in a bout of horror. Dazed and utterly perplexed, I found my way downstairs and met up with my friend. He was in the kitchen, sitting at a round table that hadn't been there before. Where did that come from? I wondered. My friend stared at his open paper and reread the words several times before he looked at me and turned the page my way. It said, "Go to the kitchen and sit at the round table." We stared at each other for a few moments, vaguely afraid, but then we began to chuckle. Within seconds, we were laughing our heads off, marveling at our newfound game. We could hardly believe what had happened, but being young as we were, the mystery was endlessly exciting. We decided again to open another scrunched up piece of paper. As we opened up the crumpled papers on the floor, we experienced the same sudden flash of rainbow colors. But this time, I ended up lying down in the field behind the mansion. When I peered into the paper in my right hand, it read, "Lie down in the field behind the mansion." I giggled uncontrollably. After a few minutes of running around the house, I found my friend collecting multiple balls of paper in his arms, eager to experience more of these strange, exciting phenomena. We both got the gist of what was happening at this point. We had no idea as to how it was possible, but we decided to have more fun with it. The supernatural always had a way of captivating our hearts. After a few more run-throughs with these strange mini teleportation devices, I began to feel apprehensive. I wondered if, at one point, I would be placed somewhere I didn't want to be, or I'd be made to do something that I didn't enjoy. We continued though. Minute after minute, we unfolded many papers and traveled through bedrooms, closets, trees. But then, after having been on the roof of the mansion, I stood before my friend, dead on the living room floor. I didn't scream. I couldn't. Murder him. I read on my crumpled page as I felt a surge of vomit and bile rising into my throat. Nothing came out, but the sickness in my throat spread to my stomach, my head, and my heart. I didn't know what to do. At this point, I began to scream and shout, praying to God for this to be a nightmare. I wanted it to go away. I wanted to rewind our day and be outside again, together, walking underneath the trees. All I could do was hide his body in a cupboard. I willed myself to be calm, and I hesitantly unfolded another paper in the hopes that the problem would correct itself. Once again, I saw the colors of the rainbow, and I found myself standing behind a tree several meters away from the house. I could clearly see the front door. Within a few instants, I saw both myself and my friend walk through that door. I began to wonder if I had died as well, or if I was having an out-of-body experience. I looked at the sheet in my hand, and the only words scrawled upon it were, "Time will repeat itself, and a paradox will take place, and it will be allowed." That gave me an idea. In my pocket remained the paper that made me kill my friend. Without looking at it, I crumpled it back up. Quietly, I followed my other self, who had separated from my friend as he explored the rooms of the house. As I crept behind him, he turned around very suddenly. Before he could utter a syllable, I forced the paper in front of my eyes, and in a flash of rainbow colors, I was able to kill my other self. The laws of time allowed me to take over my dead self place in this world, and also because of the fact that it was allowed to happen, as it was written on the second piece of paper that I had on me, which reversed time. It must have control over time and paradoxes, which made me now the new alive and present of my other dead self. I hid my limp, bleeding other dead self in the cupboard in the upstairs bathroom to rot. To my great relief, I heard my friend call my name from downstairs. My friend who managed to stay alive and well, my best friend. When I went downstairs, he greeted me excitedly, smiling childishly, and being blissfully unaware of the situation. I pretended that nothing had happened. In a heartbeat, I told him that the house creeped me out, and that it would be much better if we left. After that day, we never went near the mansion again. I don't know if anyone saw or heard about anything that happened between us, but I recently heard from another friend that the house had been demolished, and I can tell you with great certainty that while this news was a relief, I dreaded the probable prospect that my corpse was uncovered in the bathroom cabinet. I grew up in a town called Steubenville, Ohio, which had some pretty creepy places in it. I went through a lot of scary experiences in my life. A love of all things creepy is a reason why I'm going to school, majoring in criminal justice to become a forensics analyst. This story I'm telling now happened when I was about 13, about to be 14. I was ending my 8th grade year and it was around April, starting to get warm out, which I loved. One day, me and my best friend, let's call her A for the story, decided to go hiking and smoke some weed in the Fernwood Park. Fernwood Park was a huge forest in the town I grew up in, and it was a great place to go into and smoke weed in privacy. Me and A decided to start our hike on one of the trails that led to an old abandoned house that an old lady used to live in many years ago. Many people were scared shitless to go in the house, saying the old lady haunted it. She was said to be a psychopath that led children into her home. Then when they were in there, she butchered them and ate them. This supposedly happened in the 1930s, and no one knows what actually happened to her. Legend says, during the time there was a huge number of disappearances of children, and no one suspected the old crazy lady in the house till years later. Legend also said that she ended up dying in the house, and that's when all the disappearances of children stopped. No one has lived in the house for years upon years, and it has been just sitting there abandoned. "That's a load of bullshit," A said, about to go to the house. "Let's go check it out when we get to it," she said. Me being a naive preteen stoner chick, I said, hell yeah, but deep inside, being secretly creeped out to go in the house. We hiked down the trail smoking a joint as we got closer and closer to the house. As we got to the end of the trail, we were starting to see the house from a distance. On the trail I was walking in, I noticed something rusty on the ground. I said to A, "Hey, come see this." "What is that?" A said. As I looked closer, I could see it was an old rusty-looking bear trap. "It looks like it's from forever ago," I said. "What's that doing right there, close to this dingy shithouse?" A said. Then I replied, "Maybe someone trapping an animal. The old lady that lived there, perhaps." A replied, "You sure she was catching any animal?" My stomach turned from being so high, remembering the legend of her capturing kids and eating them. We then came to the front of the house, and I was shaken up a bit, as we both were stoned. I was looking over the whole front of the house. Broken windows, like people must have came there throwing some rocks through the windows. Paint completely stripped off of it. The front door was still intact, but a huge hole was in the middle of it. "You ready to go in?" A said. "I guess," I replied to her. "What are you scared of? Come on," A said. I replied with, "Okay, let's go in." I was paranoid as hell. We slowly entered the front door as it creaked as we came in. We first started walking through what looked to be the living room. Furniture was still in there. No one had touched it, but it was covered with dust and rips. The hardwood floor was dingy and dirty. The walls were covered in a pitch-black wallpaper that was peeling off. This place looked like it had not been lived in for many years. We entered the next room, which looked to be a bedroom, and the mattress was caked with brown gunk, and the dresser was covered in dust. As A walked around, I saw something by the dresser. It looked like an old toolbox. As I was talking to A, I said to her, "Hey, come see this." "Open it," A replied. I struggled getting it opened at first, but I finally did by digging my fingernails in the latch. Inside of it was dozens of different knives that someone would use during surgery. "These are really creepy," I said. As we looked closer, we could see that looked like dried up blood on some of them. As we started getting more and more creeped out, A said, "Hey, let's just check it out a tiny bit more," A said. Next, we entered what looked to be the kitchen, because of an old stove and two very old looking pots on it. These pots were very large and looked like they could hold a lot of contents in it. You could put a whole baby deer in one of these pots, A said. "A human child," I replied. As I said this, I looked down to see a huge dried up stain on the floor. Looked like that was a huge puddle of blood at one time. A's voice was shaken up a bit now. "Come on, let's go. I've seen enough of this place. It's getting dark out," I said. As it was getting more dark, which creeped me out a lot more being in that house. One last door we noticed, and A wanted to check it out. So she opened the door that led to stairs. "Let's go down," A said. "Hell no," I replied. I had enough and I wanted to leave. "Let's check this out, then we will leave," she said to me. We slowly started going down the stairs. It was creaking. It was pitch black as we stood at the bottom of it. It was a basement. We couldn't see a thing. It was too dark. "Okay, let's go now," I said. A pulls out her lighter and lights it up. As her lighter brightens up the room, it reveals a bunch of old rusty meat hooks hanging from the ceiling of the basement. One of them having a bone which we didn't know was animal or human. I gasp for air as A screams. As we do this, we hear a crackling noise in the corner of the basement in the darkness. Suddenly, we hear a whispering voice say, "I'm going to get you." As we hear this, we run up the stairs, tripping and slipping on them as we go up. As we run to the front door, we turn the knob, and for some strange reason, it's stuck. "What the hell?" I scream. As we are banging and kicking at the door to get out, we start hearing slight footsteps coming up the stairs. We start kicking harder and harder. "Why the hell won't it come open?" I said. It finally opens wide, and we run out. A runs faster than lightning ahead of me as I run behind her. As I'm running, I turn my head to look back at the house about 20 feet away. I see in the window a face of an old lady, looking like her flesh on her face was rotting with a sinister grin on her face. We finally get to the end of the other side of the trail on the road. We walk back to A's house, and I ended up spending the night there. We were severely scared as shit, and didn't talk much about it, except let's not tell no one about it, and let's never go back to the house. We found out the legend of the house was actually true, and that old lady was one evil person. I know I saw her in the window when I looked back. That was her for sure, or the demon ghost of her. We never told anybody about it till now. I hear that the house still stands there, and at the end of the trail, abandoned. All I know is I'll never go back in that house or down that trail ever again. It's already 3 a.m., and I'm passed out on the couch watching the chase that I had recognized from earlier when I wasn't in. The audience breaks into laughter as my eyes slide shut, and I'm suddenly pulled out of the depth of my sleep with a loud click, like the sound of a channel being changed with static blurring out the TV speakers on 100. My eyes shoot open at the blast of sound. My upper half flies forward, whilst my hand automatically reaches out towards the remote on the ground, only to discover nothing was there. I stand to turn the volume down, using the buttons on the side of the remote, and start awakening at the realization that they too are gone. A few small words slip from my mouth. What the? Before being interrupted by a clown's laugh echoing through the halls, bouncing off the walls, and slithering into my ears. I looked around and saw that, though this is my house, it couldn't be further from it. I'm still in the same room I was in when I fell asleep, but everything's changed. The wallpaper has adopted a dirty gray color with stains of browns and blacks. I don't want to know what they are. It had also started peeling away from the walls with a thick, black goo clinging to the empty wall behind it, some of it torn and some just hanging. All the lights had turned dim and yellow, leaving only just enough light to allow me to see the room, with the bulbs covered in layers of grime, which they had never been before. The couch I had been lying on previously has the springs and stuffing hanging out like it's been ripped apart by a wild animal. The floorboards had become rotten and squeaky and looked like they belonged in a water-ridden shed that had been blown down by the wind, with gaps between each plank allowing me to peek into the black below. Though my house had no cellar, I could hear the darkness beckoning me, and something moving. As if an animal were stuck in a swamp, trying desperately to get out, but it sounds distant, as if it were 10 meters down. I turned my eyes to the windows and walked towards the glass door slowly, trying not to make the floor squeak, and as I reach the doors, I peer out into the rows upon rows of wheat. Fields of stuff surrounding me, right up the steps, and directly in front of me about 100 meters away is a scarecrow, straw hanging out from everywhere in the torn and filthy clothes, its head dangling down, the hat it's wearing casting a shadow from the damp moonlight across what I presume is its face. Not that I can see it, there's something sinister about it. It looks too human, like it will come alive any second. I reach out towards the door handle to find it had been fused shut, so I turn and look around the room I was so used to seeing, and head slowly towards the door, avoiding all holes in the floor. I reach for the handle, and my skin makes contact with what I presume is the same black goo coating the walls. It burns, so I slam my hand back in a choked cry and scrape it along the couch to find the texture of the goo was more like a tar. But after getting everything of that I possibly could, I stare at my palm and through the dim-lit room and thick dust that I had accumulated. I saw that my palm had been badly burned. I mean, it looked like someone had melted a red candle and dripped it there, leaving what looked like sinkholes in my skin, and bulging white parts where my hand had filled with fluid. I can feel my hand still sizzling, and I can hear my skin crackling as I watch the blood start trickling down my hand and onto the floor. The second a drop of my blood hits the ground, it sizzles up on the floorboard, and started bubbling, and then disappeared. All of this combined made my stomach turn, and my eyes burn, sending streams of tears down my cheeks. I look around the room to find something to open the door with. I'm not touching that again. Keeping this in mind, I make sure to stay away from the walls and rip some of the stuffing that is already torn from the couch cushions and wrap it around the handle. As soon as it makes contact, the stuffing starts to melt. So I turn the handle and slam it towards me before the tar can reach my fingers, causing some more of the doorframe to snap away from the wall and my hand to feel like its skin had just been peeled away. As it starts to bleed and ooze pus heavily, the wood smashes together and flies into a pile on the floor. I peer out into the hallway and notice that the walls and floor mirror that of those in the living room. However, when I take a step out into the floor, my feet suddenly feel like ice, as water wraps around them. As soon as I opened the door, water started to pour into the room, which I had just come from, and started to drain through the gaps in the floorboards. I hear it hit another body of water, as if the room that lies below is also filled to the brim. I walk to the stairs, and as I place my foot upon the first step, the silence leaves, and instead, the surrounding air is occupied with whispers of a small child, a small girl's voice singing a creepy lullaby, and as I climb further up the stairs, what sounds like a music box starts to ring out, accompanied by the sound of bells that would usually be attached to a clown's collar. With each step I climb on the seemingly never-ending stairs, the child's voice grows louder and the bells grow nearer. The hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, and instead of singing, the children's voice begins to laugh. I take one more step up, and it creaks. With that, all the noise stops instantly, and from behind me, in the silence, I hear a single bell ring. Slowly, I turn to face the bottom, and my eyes are met with, I don't know what it is, but as soon as I made eye contact with it, it starts moving towards me, laughing like a clown at first, but then it changes to a kind of clicking. Its movements are distorted, like all of its bones were broken, and it turns its limbs in any direction, crawling like a spider, upside down, tripping over its own legs, still blurting out a mixture between a laugh and a click. Its eyes were bright yellow, with flakes of red like fire, its pupils the size of a pinhead. It had a large smile that took up most of its face, each tooth too big to fit in its mouth, and all pointed and stained. Its skin was black and cracked, peeling off from every crease in its body, allowing its pink, fleshy insides to show. Each step it takes towards me, its legs buckle under its weight, and sharply collapse towards the floor, when suddenly, it stops and looks at me, with its piercing eyes, which feel like they have a suffocating grip on my soul. It is now trying to yank it out when suddenly, it lets out a scream. Not a normal scream. It's deafening, it's high-pitched, and I can feel my ears start to bleed as I tumble back at the noise. It's like some siren's call, for my death to soon follow was certain. I watch as its jaw unhinges like a snake, reaching a wideness I didn't know was possible for anything in existence, as spiders start to pour out by the thousands. I fall onto my back while on the stairs, smashing my elbow into the rotten wood. I can only see this thing through gaps in the planks covering the window that occupies the top of the stairs, as small streams of moonlight scatter in. Even then, the light is still quite dim through the fog outside, but there is just enough light to see the thing fly at me suddenly, taking an extremely large leap, hands stretching out towards my face, with cracked and bloody nails aimed right at my eyes. I cover my face with my arms as it smashes on top of me. I feel the steps below me crack, and I get sent flying downwards until I smash, back first, into water, and sink for what feels like forever, whilst I feel this thing thrashing and writhing in the water above me. Suddenly, everything goes calm, and I finally hit the bottom. I'm desperate for air, so I slam my feet off the floor and swim back to the top. This water must have been at least 15 meters deep, but when I finally reached the top, I suck the air into my lungs, choking at every breath. I wipe my eyes and look around whilst I tread water in an effort to not die drowning after everything I've been through. The thing that had just attacked me, the thing that is probably made of pure fear, is nowhere to be found. I look down at what I'm in and get disgusted by the water that surrounds me. It's filthy and brown in color, that is only visible and probably made worse by the fact that there are lights on the walls that look like they belonged in a mine. Yellow and covered in dust, surrounded by metal bars along the tops of the walls. There isn't any space under my house. It was built over a layer of concrete, so the fact that this room is here, and the fact that I'm in it, should be impossible. However, it looks like someone had mined out a huge, yet claustrophobic hole with jagged rock walls. The more I look around, I notice there are some stairs that lead up to a trapdoor. None of this exists. Its being there baffles me. Before I get the chance to start to swim over, I notice that the water is stirring around me, when I feel something tug at my legs and I'm yanked back down into the depths. My legs start burning as rough claws slice through my skin. I kick whatever it is away from me, in panic to get back to the surface. And when I finally smash through the barrier between water and air, my eyes burst open to be met with a large, wrinkled face in front of me. I was surrounded by human-like creatures that were naked, hairless, and looked like they had been in the bath for 2 years. Their skin was pale and peeling away. Their eyes were cloudy white, as if they had gone blind, but I know they can see me. They all pounce on me. The one with its nose barely not touching mine reaches its arms out, and with one swift stroke down, it slices its nails across my face, causing the blood to pour from my cheek and forehead. To my horror, I in fact notice that they don't have nails, but instead, where they should have been, they had razor-sharp knives growing from their skin. Fearing for my life, I start thrashing, trying to get to the stairs, whilst they swing their arms at me, slicing my skin open with every stroke. I finally made it to the stairs and crawl up them as fast as I can. The creatures close behind me, moving slowly because they know I'm trapped. And so do I when I slam my hand on the trap door and it doesn't budge. They have reached the bottom of the steps, and I'm slamming my arms and back into it, but it won't move. Not even an inch. This is the end for me. They're only a few steps away from me when I slam myself into the door one more time and it flies open. I pull myself up and swing my feet around and up as one of them swings their arms out to cut me again, but narrowly misses. When I'm up, I notice that I'm at my back door again, shocked as to how I'm here, as I went in the opposite direction. Remembering that what was below me, I look back down to see if they were trying to follow me out, but they were all gone. All of them. The water didn't even look disturbed, as if they had never been there, but I know they had. I was bleeding, a lot. I slammed the trap door back shut with my foot, just in case. Breathing heavily and lightheaded from blood loss, I turn around. I'm so sick of this house and I'm leaving. I walk over to pick up the little coffee table that was made of metal, ignoring the massive amounts of pain I'm in as the cold metal touches my tender palm and blood continues to drip to the floor, and slam it as hard as my body allows me across the glass. I didn't notice at first that the scarecrow was no longer there, but its stand was, and at this point, I didn't care. I slammed the now bent table against the glass once more. A wave of relief rushed through me as I hear the glass shatter and hit the floor. I take a step outside, and my feet crush the glass below them, and I put my foot out to step on the cool, soft dirt of the wheat fields. I can leave here, this nightmare. But as I put my foot down, I sink into the mud up to my knees. I didn't care. It's cold, but I wanted to leave. It burns, but I've got to leave. I take another step, sinking further, but I don't stop there. The further I move forward, the further down I go until I'm practically swimming. But it seems to get thicker and heavier around me, and now I just can't move. The dirt is up to my neck, and now I'm stuck, when suddenly I hear something behind me, like straw rustling. It stops behind me, and now I'm buried with my head sticking out. The dirt has solidified and frozen around me, and I can even turn around to look at what is breathing down my neck. But as it turns out, I didn't have to turn. It walks around in front of me, straw still sticking out of his clothes, its old, ripped clothes. But this time, I can see its face, made up of ripped parts of a potato sack stitched together with big black string. No eyes, but instead, empty sockets that sink deep into its head. It smiles at me and turns its head. It doesn't have teeth, but instead, where they should be, are rows and rows of needles, injection needles. It laughs at me, and with each chuckle, it lets loose the ground grows soft again. It puts its hand on my head and pushes me further down so my mouth and nose are covered, leaving my eyes for about a minute while I suffocate. Tears start flooding from my eyes as it laughs one more time and pushes me under. It's black, and my eyes open to the sound of an audience laughing. I look at the clock, which reads 3:01 a.m. I'm back in my normal living room. The wallpaper is on the walls still, the doorframe and glass window are intact, but I'm still messed up. My palms still burned. I still have slashes all over my body and face. I'm still covered in mud, but everything is normal again. I sit up, still very lightheaded, and stand. I have carpet again. I look around and move to the back door to look out. It's just my garden in the darkness, with small trees lining the fence. I wipe my face with my hands, and just hold my head for a second whilst I know I'm safe again. After I remove my hands, I look back up and stare at the glass doors, at the scarecrow at the end of my garden, smiling with its needle teeth and waving at me. The wooden door behind me creaks open, and when it stops, one single bell rings. Thanks for watching, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your story, my email and subreddit will be in the description below. And also, if you're not subscribed, please do if you want. And don't forget to like and comment as well. Have beautiful nightmares. And I will see you next time.